4 capabilities, 1 week, all moved out of beta at the same time. Computer use, browser use, the Skills API, the Files API. According to Anthropic's developer platform documentation, each has now been promoted to general availability, meaning the experimental headers come off. The interfaces are treated as stable, and they fall under the same support and versioning commitments as the rest of the Claude API. That sounds like housekeeping. It isn't. In the API business, beta is a legal and operational hedge. It means, this may break, don't build a business on it. General availability removes the hedge, and Anthropic just removed it 4 times over. To understand the signal, you have to understand the mechanism. Anthropic gates experimental features behind an explicit opt-in header, Anthropic Beta, with a version string naming the specific capability. Developers had to declare, in every request, that they were knowingly using unfinished infrastructure. Anthropic reserved the right to change behavior without notice. Enterprise procurement teams read those clauses, and many of them said no. General availability changes the contract. Stable request formats. Deprecation notices instead of surprise changes. Inclusion in standard commercial terms. For a Fortune 500 buyer, that distinction is the difference between a pilot project and a production deployment. Computer use is the oldest of the 4. Anthropic introduced it in public beta on October 22, 2024, alongside the upgraded Claude 3.5 Sonnet. The premise was blunt. Instead of building an API for every application, give the model a screenshot, a virtual mouse and a keyboard, and let it operate software the way a person does. The first version was, by Anthropic's own description, slow and error-prone. On OS World, a benchmark of real desktop tasks, the initial screenshot-only results were in the mid-teens as a percentage. Later model generations, according to Anthropic's published evaluations, climbed dramatically on that same benchmark. GA arrives only now, after the capability stopped being a curiosity. Browser use is narrower and, in some ways, riskier. It targets the web specifically, navigating pages, filling forms, and critically, operating inside sessions the user is already logged into. Anthropic's earlier work here surfaced publicly as Claude for Chrome, a limited research preview announced in August 2025 and initially restricted to a small number of Mac subscribers. The company was explicit about why it moved slowly: prompt injection. Hidden instructions on a web page can hijack an agent that has your credentials. In its own red teaming disclosures, Anthropic reported measurable but incomplete reductions in attack success rates after mitigations. Not 0. That number was the gating factor. Agent skills were announced on October 16, 2025. The design is deliberately unglamorous. A folder containing a skill.md file with instructions, plus optional scripts and reference material. The engineering idea underneath is what Anthropic calls progressive disclosure. The model reads only a short description until a task actually requires the skill, then loads the full contents. That keeps context windows from being consumed by capabilities the agent isn't using. The practical consequence is portability. The same skill folder is meant to work in the Claude apps, in Claude Code, and through the API. Institutional knowledge becomes a file you can version control, review, and reuse. The Files API launched in beta on May 22, 2025, part of a cluster of agent-oriented releases that also included a code execution tool and expanded prompt caching. Its function is mundane and load-bearing. Upload a document once, receive an identifier, reference it across many requests and many sessions without resending the bytes. It also feeds the code execution sandbox, so an agent can write a file, then read it back later. Without persistent file storage, Every long-running agent has to re-establish its own context from scratch. Files is the memory substrate the other three capabilities lean on. Read together. The four aren't a grab bag, they're a stack. Computer use gives an agent hands and eyes. Browser use gives it reach into authenticated web systems. Skills give it repeatable procedure. Files give it durable memory. Any one of them alone produces a demo. All four, stable and supported, produce something a company can actually deploy against a workflow that matters. Promoting them simultaneously is a statement about sequencing. Anthropic could have staggered these releases across quarters for 4 separate news cycles. Choosing not to suggests the priority was the complete stack, not the individual headlines. This does not happen in isolation. Every major lab has shipped some version of a browsing or computer operating agent, and the differentiator has shifted from whether the capability exists to whether it can be run under audit, with permissions, at scale. Anthropic also spent 2025 pushing the surrounding plumbing outward. The Model Context Protocol, introduced in November 2024, was later placed under independent stewardship rather than kept proprietary. That pattern is consistent. Commoditize the connective layer, compete on the model and the platform. The unresolved question is security. Giving software an authenticated browser session and a keyboard is a genuinely new exposure surface, and the labs themselves say so. So what should an informed observer actually track from here? First, deprecation notices. GA means Anthropic owes advance warning before breaking changes, whether it honors that is verifiable. Second, published incident data. If browser operating agents are being deployed at enterprise scale, prompt injection failures will surface, in disclosures or in the absence of them. Third, adoption specifics rather than announcements. Named customers running named workflows in production is the evidence that matters. The claims here rest on Anthropic's own documentation and release notes. Anyone building on this should verify current status directly against the changelog, because in this industry the ground moves fast, and general availability is a promise, not a proof.